Hi everyone, my name is DeLoach and I will be presenting on my assignment 3, which is my micro teaching project for my EAD 861 course. So a couple of things we're going to go over today. We're going to start with the introduction. I'll give you the information about my learners, my teaching setting, and the context. So basically who, where, when, and why. And then we'll go over goals and strategies, so what I wanted to accomplish with my lesson and what I used to get there specifically. The experience we'll go over next, why it was designed the way it was, and the theories that were used. Strengths and weaknesses, so what was good and what could be changed for the future. And then we'll go over my conclusion, which is what I learned and moving forward with this. I decided to do Flyer Fusion, a Canva workshop for resident assistants, as my subject for my teaching. So who? My learners. I taught 6 college students, 4 female identifying and 2 male identifying. They are all resident assistants with varying experience, whether that be they've been here for a semester or they've been here for a year. And they're all aged between 18 and 20. Adult learners have been described by Merriam and Brockett as those whose age, social roles, or self-perception define them as adults. That is why I know sometimes I think of my learners as young or young students because they're younger than me, but these are my adult learners that I chose to teach. So the when and where, the setting. We did our lesson in a college classroom that had projectors set up at the back of the room. In retrospect, I didn't know when I booked the room that this was a setup, but it ended up working. There were multiple desks formed in 2 groups, and learners were able to sit where they are comfortable and where they could see the screen. The lesson took place on 11/30/23 at 6 p.m. on the Georgia campus of Southwestern Michigan College. Why? So, picking the environment that I did, it was accessible, no one was in the room, and it was close to where we usually meet. It was familiar to me and my students, as the building it was in, we tend to have meetings. It had the technology I needed, which was a computer and a projector. There was plenty of room in case students wanted to have space or move around the room. It was outside of our usual meeting space, which is typically in another building. I wanted to change the environment so that they could focus, and I chose a subject that is relevant to their position, which I will go into a little bit further in the presentation. As far as goals and strategies, so what I wanted to accomplish and what I used to get there. The goal of this lesson plan is to give resident assistants the tools to create their flyers, to market their events on campus, feel comfortable and confident in using canva.com by practicing, and give them the key design elements they need to include when making these promotions. So the learning goals of the lesson plan were, by the end, students should be able to make a flyer in Canva, know the key elements of design that I chose, so a clear title, the date and time, location, eye-catching information, and the use of complementary colors or images. They should be able to use basic elements of the Canva software. We focused on templates, text, images, and exporting. They should feel more comfortable using Canva by the end. They should feel more comfortable describing what they like about events and why they attend them. And they should know how to import media into a Google Slides document. So the technology that I used to get us to these goals were Canva. Canva is a free-to-use online graphic design tool. It can be used to create social media posts, presentations. It's something that's accessible. There's a free version, and it's something that we encourage students to use. We use Mentimeter, which is an interactive audience engagement tool that I call a cross between Google Slides and Kahoot, and it was something they had never used before. We used Google Slides. This allows you to present information easily, and this is what I chose for us to present our designs so everyone could see in the room. We used YouTube, which is a video hosting app where you can upload and watch videos. I created a video going over how to use the basics so that they could watch it and review it later. 5 out of the 6 students used laptops and 1 student used an iPad, and then as I said before, there was a computer and a projector in the classroom. So that's the technology that I used to get us to our goal. So the experience itself, why it was designed the way it was, and the theories behind it. So, an overview of the presentation. So we started out, the students conducted a self-assessment. I asked them a couple different questions that I'll put on the screen here, kind of to get a baseline of what they knew, kind of where I needed to hit a little harder, and what baseline knowledge we all had going in. Students learned why we make flyers. I gave them the information on the purpose that they serve, so they know that it's relevant to their work. The students learned design elements, and they saw an example of a flyer that had those specific elements that I was looking for. Then they learned the basics of Canva with the YouTube video I created. And then students received their assignment. So they needed to make a flyer for an event, and I gave them everything they needed. I gave them a little more than they needed to see what they did with the information. As they worked, they had 10 minutes. I circled around for feedback and questions. I let them know that they weren't on their own and that I wanted to encourage them to ask for help. So then the projects were uploaded to the Google Slides and were reviewed. I pointed out those key elements that I was looking for and the examples that were directly in their designs. Each design looked completely different. I'll be sure to put a couple up on the screen so you can kind of see the variation of design, and most of them were used from templates, and they had those things, the clear title, the information I needed, those keywords, and the complementary colors. They were a lot of similar themes, but we reviewed each of them and I said what was extraordinary about them, those things that they really hit, and a little bit of feedback for some hard to read things. So then after we reviewed that, the students conducted their ending self-assessment. I asked them to vote on a scale to see where they were with the learning goals that I wanted them to have. So I could kind of assess where we could go from here. As I will see them, we'll have meetings in the future, these things that I can work on them with, some things they might already know, and it's anonymous, so they feel free to share. So some of the key points and theories that I had in mind when creating this lesson, the biggest one being motivation. Adults are motivated by wanting to improve their situation in adult life, whether that situation is work-related, personal, or social and community-related. And so when I chose my subject, I really thought about this. I know that adult learners want to learn things that are relevant to their work or developing themselves. And so I chose something that I knew would help them because creating flyers is an expectation that I give them in their job. I was thinking about behaviorism. Much of adult vocational education is focused on identifying skills needed for specific occupations. I wanted them to know this was relevant and have them see how it could transform what they do and how it impacts their position and changing them as a person and their behaviors. And then lastly, self-directed. Because adults see themselves as independent and self-directing, there develops a deep psychological need to be perceived by others and treated by others as capable of taking responsibility for ourselves. This is super important, especially with college students, because they're kind of just stepping into those adult roles and feeling like an adult for the first time. So making sure that I'm treating them in that way, letting them assess their own journey, letting them create it the way they want with no constrictions, but giving them those elements that they need to include in there, but the rest is on themselves, and they have the responsibility of asking for help and having that experience the way they want it to. As far as strengths and weaknesses, what was good and what could be changed. As far as strengths, Mentimeter is a new technology for my learners. These learners get presented things all the time in Google Slides, in PowerPoint, they sit there and they watch it and they want the slides so they can take the notes. They want to check the boxes. This was something new that they had not used before. And as someone who is majoring in educational technology, technology was a really crucial part of this presentation for me. I wanted them to be involved, and I knew by giving them something they weren't familiar with, it may cause them to struggle along the way, but I knew it would keep them engaged because they wanted to know what it was about. It wasn't the same thing that they had always done. Each student showed the key concepts of design in their flyers. This was something it showed me directly that they understood the concepts and they were motivated by the assignment. They were engaged and motivated, like I said, kind of just overall from these different things, is that they were motivated, they were engaged, they were watching other people's presentations, and from what I could see, everyone was on track. The students saw different perspectives. They saw that there was a different way to do the same thing, to accomplish the same goal, and there's not a wrong way to do that. As far as weaknesses, I realized through my presentation that Canva can look different on different platforms, so different computers, different browsers. I was showing them, for example, how to add a background, and I realized that the background button was not there on one of my students' computers. So we kind of had to navigate that together and adjust to get the same result. Canva can also look different depending on what kind of account you have. So while it is a free software, you can pay for a premium subscription or add others in your classroom to experience those benefits. So I was going off of the impression of how my account looks, but that's not the same for every learner. Another weakness was Mentimeter had problems during our presentation. I had 6 students, and so I would have 4 answers up on the board, and I was kind of waiting, and it was a little awkward, and students had to kind of like speak out and say, I submitted it, but it won't take it. So not everyone's voice could be heard anonymously. Students were still given the opportunity to share, but they weren't given the same anonymity that the other 4 students were. I would say another weakness is that I couldn't see everyone's screens. So where I was while I was doing the presentation, not the circling around, I couldn't see what everyone was working on. I couldn't see if they were engaged. The only reason I do know they were engaged is because Mentimeter has a portion of the screen where they can kind of react to the slides, and everyone was really playing around with that feature, so I knew they were on the slide. In conclusion, what I learned and moving forward with this. So a couple things that I learned and how I could implement this in the future and how I plan on implementing this for my adult learners. Technology bumps. I learned that there's going to be bumps even if the Wi-Fi is working, even if it's working for me, even if it's working for a couple students. This is something that I really learned through this experience. Additionally, I learned that I need to do a test run. I didn't know exactly what they were going to see on their end. I kind of just trusted the software because of what I thought it would do. Thankfully, it did show them on their screen, and then I had it projected, so it was accessible for different people, but I kind of got lucky with that because I didn't know for sure at the time. I learned a lot about motivation and rewards, and that's kind of the thing that I've stuck with through all these presentations and through our reading. Motivation has stuck with me because I feel like working with college students, they're motivated. They're motivated by rewards, by behavioral techniques. Like, I have always kind of felt like I need to have an incentive. And most of the time I do. But one thing that I really learned through this is that I didn't have to give my students an incentive when the presentation was interactive. Normally, I would offer like the currency that we give at our school for kind of like arcade prizes or extra credit or something like that. almost feeling like I'm bribing them to listen to me or help me out with this assignment. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be genuine. And so I learned through that you don't always have to give up something or a reward to motivate your students. They're motivated through other things. As you can see in this table, there's a bunch of different categories of how we can motivate adult learners and how they are motivated. So I'm definitely going to take that with me and try to think about that before I change what I do. I really want to move forward and focus on transformative learning. I really want to focus on this with my students so that they can see why I'm having them do what I'm having them do, how it's going to change them as a person, and how it's going to benefit them. A lot of the times we kind of tell people things. We do it this way because it's how we've always done it. It's because what I need you to do. It's in your contract. These are the things, when you signed up for this class, this is what you said you would do. I want to really focus on the learning aspect and show them how it benefits them to go back into that motivation. That is all that I have for this presentation. I feel like it was overall very effective. My learners did give me great feedback and I did have them accomplish those goals. These are my references. If you have any additional questions, please let me know or feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to continue the discussion with you.